Welcome to episode number 3 of the Remington Kuhn Show. This episode, we have a special guest, Christian Tagert. We're here to talk
What's
about
up? How are
whatever
you?
you want to talk about, man. So go ahead, give yourself a brief intro, and tell them about yourself.
All right, Remington. So you and I kind of have Penn State in common. So I think I would love to start there, but specifically Penn State football. Let's get to, understand that. They just had their spring game. It was a weird score. Did you see the spring game,
No,
Remington?
I did
Or
not.
it was 27-0, the white team. So what can you learn off of that?
I mean, that's a curious score for a spring game because they usually balance it out, right? I mean, usually
Yeah.
it's a
I mean,
competitive game.
Florida's spring game was probably 19-17, so as you said, they kind of even it out. I tried to look. I saw one comment, but it kind of backs up how Drew Aller was last season. And the one comment said Drew Aller was inaccurate, which again, I didn't even see the game. I didn't know if it was televised because I've only heard Michigan and Ohio State are televised with the new coaching change at Michigan. Um, but Drew Aller did throw for 202 yards. Um, I just worry that the coaching staff, and a lot of complaining was they're going to just keep him from throwing the ball far and like big bombs like we saw with
hmm
Clifford. So, let's start there. Let's talk about that.
Well, my biggest problem with Penn State last year, I didn't like the way Aller played, but at the same time, James Franklin didn't let him loose. He didn't let him throw the ball the way that I would like to see Drew Aller throw the ball because he's got the talent. We saw that from
Well,
when he was a backup and comes into a game and just balls out. And I'm like, wow, I'm excited that this is our next, starting quarterback, maybe the first good Penn State quarterback since Hackenberg, McSorley, if you want to
yeah,
count him. But Drew Aller has all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of opening up the offense and giving him the opportunity to showcase his talent, which is something that I
yeah.
don't think they really did. They didn't really open the playbook wide enough for Drew Aller. Now, the second thing, which I'm going to lead into, is Penn State didn't have anybody to catch the ball for Drew Aller. They had Keandre Lambert Smith was their best receiver last year, and now they got a transfer in Julian Fleming from Ohio State, who I'm excited about. But if you didn't see the news today, Keandre Lambert Smith is transferring. He's entering the portal. So we're losing our number one receiver from last year, replacing him with another number one type receiver. But who's going to catch the ball from Drew Aller is my question.
Did Parker Washington move on, or is he still
Parker Washington had his rookie year last year with the Jags. So
okay?
he got drafted
Uh,
2 years ago.
Okay. So yeah, I unfortunately haven't kept up with ever since I come out to Florida, I haven't kept up to the with the football thing. But I just know that because I mean Penn State's football games, they're on every weekend. They're at bars, and I know a guy who loves them, a bartender. But I can't begin to tell. I will say this though, I have compared Drew Aller to Trace McSorley, but I totally agree with you 100%. There were so many games. It was like the Phillies, which I want to talk about in a second. They're just you want him to go long. Like yes, so they've won what they only had two losses, right?
hmm
Michigan, Ohio State. Um, but their play and their it just was so I guess maybe agonizing that you're just like, what is this?
hmm
And I remember before I came here, I said to a bunch of my friends back home, I said, if they can beat Michigan and if they can beat Ohio State, Penn State's for real. It was the same freaking thing I said about the Dolphins. If the Dolphins could beat the Eagles, if the Dolphins could beat the Bills. And you know what? Nothing happened. So neither team is legit.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is Penn State always is going to be measured up to Ohio State and Michigan, who are two of the best programs in college football year in and year out. Michigan more so lately. Ohio State has been an absolute juggernaut for years. But Penn State's always going to have that high expectation of them to be able to have those close games or at least split series with those teams. And they always end up losing both of those two games almost every season without fail. If you remember back to when Saquon Barkley was at Penn State, which we'll get into the Eagles obviously in this episode as well, Saquon Barkley was the offense for Penn State. His it factor made Penn State able to measure up to teams like Ohio State and Michigan and keep it competitive. But since Saquon wasn't Nittany Lion anymore, since he went to the NFL, Penn State hasn't had that same type of offense that can outscore a Michigan or an Ohio State, as well as the defense. The defense the last few years under Manny Diaz has been great. But now that Manny Diaz is moving on, I'm also worried about the defense because I thought he was a exceptional coordinator. But the other thing that we have to consider with Penn State moving into next year is the players they're losing to the draft. You're losing Chop Robinson. You're losing Adisa Isaac. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you're losing Olu Fashanu, the best tackle on the team. It's going to be rough for Penn State with a lot of players graduating, and then, like I said, quite a few projected first-round picks potentially in Fashanu and Robinson, and then I would say Adisa Isaac, probably a second-round pick, another great player for Penn State. So where's the pass rush going to come from? How are they going to generate a pass rush without Manny Diaz's creative schemes? And is Drew Aller going to take that next step, but who is he going to throw the ball to? So like you said, you're a Penn State fan. You're from Penn, you went to Penn State for a little bit, but you also like the Gators, and we're here in Florida now. Obviously, that's a completely different story with the Gators, but if you have to pick a team moving into this year, who is your loyalty going to be tied to, the Nittany Lions or the Gators?
Okay, so I don't know if you remember, we talked about this with a friend the other day. And I'm gonna extend this question, right? I'm gonna throw a wrench in your plans because not only they're not versing Michigan this year, Penn State is. They're not versing Michigan this year. However, they're versing a bunch of teams from the West, the Pac-12, right?
Yep.
The Pac-12, yes. So, and I talked with my friend again, and this was deep back when they were still playing, and I'm thinking it's weird. I don't see the Gators going anywhere, unfortunately. The way everyone has played, Florida State, you now have Texas, you now have a whole bunch of juggernauts. I really see, I don't know, but if you'd ask me, I think I'd ride more, Penn State. I hate to say it, and I don't want to pick favorites because I like them both, but if you're going to tell me who's going to perform better and who has the better chance to beat those juggernaut teams, it's probably going to be Penn State.
The Gators had their heyday. They had their heyday, right?
They did, yeah. But I just didn't see. I didn't see much from the Gators this year. Even when they started. What did they have? I didn't look this up. They had a stretch or something of losing. They lost to FSU. They lost to Kentucky. They weren't looking good towards the end of the season. Almost kind of like the Eagles. To be quite frank, but I would definitely ride with Penn State.
Okay. Well. Okay. So let's slightly move off the top of the Penn State because, as we said, there's going to be a lot of college football talk in the next few months because the Big Ten has gotten bigger. You mentioned the Pac-12 teams. All those teams are in the Big Ten now. It's loaded more so than just having to worry about Michigan and Ohio State. Even if we don't play those teams, there's still a lot of talent in the Big Ten. So that's a completely different topic moving forward with the amped up Big Ten, the way that the divisions have changed and the playoffs, and of course the expanded playoffs are a big deal as well. So a lot to talk about leading up to that season. The draft, obviously something that's going to be talked about a lot in the next couple weeks heading in, and that's kind of why I wanted to at least mention Penn State and the Gators leading up until the NFL draft because there are some players from those teams that are going to be obviously drafted on draft day. But let's switch gears because I asked you that question about Penn State and Florida, but I also want to ask you that question for Philly and Miami because you told me, and I got the Dan Marino jersey up as well. You told me that you were a Dolphins fan as well. So I got Jalen Hurts on one side and I got Dan Marino on the other side for you. Are you going to choose the Eagles now that Saquon's there, or are you a Dolphins guy going into this upcoming NFL season?
Dolphins all the way. No,
really?
I can't break the. Not what they did to my Fins. No, I can't break that. Here's the thing, right? It's a great. It was a great grab to get Saquon Barkley. It really was. I do think that the Dolphins have restructured. They've rebuilt on defense, and kind of giving Tua the pocket ability, the ability to run, and I just love what the Dolphins have done. I've been saying this for years. I'm not going to say it again. I'm not going to say, oh, this is our year. But they could switch it up from what they did. Again, I said this last year. I'm like, if they can beat the Bills, if they can beat the Eagles, if they can beat, the Chiefs, which I thought heavily they could beat. And Tua is up in the air with a lot of fans and whatnot. But I'm gonna ride with the Dolphins. I don't know what happened with the Eagles, but it wasn't looking good for both teams at the end of the season there.
Okay, I was expecting you to go one way or the other. I was expecting either Penn State
Yeah.
Philly or
Oh, yeah.
maybe Gators Dolphins type of thing. So I
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
sure.
yeah. I know, I totally understand. Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. I don't know if I've said this to you yet, but when I was at Penn State, there was like a banner on. We had like canvas,
Mhm.
and there was a banner on for our homepage, and my teacher was a Dolphins fan, and I'm like, oh, like what have you done? Turns out he completely followed the team. He ran stats for the team, so it was kind of cool to have a Dolphins fan up there while I was at Penn State. But that's actually great point you bring up. You'd think if I'm solely focused on Florida, I'd be Miami Gators, but
No, hey, it's fine to split allegiance a little bit. I mean, we obviously have our roots and then where we are now. So I understand completely. For me, obviously, I'm a Steelers fan. I like the Eagles, but I'm a Steelers fan. So obviously, Justin Fields is the new quarterback of the Steelers. You can say Russell Wilson, but if you're looking at the future, I'm saying Justin Fields is definitely the quarterback for the Steelers. I thought personally, and other people have said this, if the Dolphins would have got rid of Tua and got Justin Fields, they're a Super Bowl contender. And I stand by that statement. I stand by that statement. Where are you on that statement?
so you're saying that the Dolphins.
If they had Justin
I don't
Fields
know.
as their quarterback
Yeah,
instead of
so-
Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, so you're right. What makes a quarterback is the wide receivers, right? There's no line team. So if you're gonna, we haven't seen a lot about Justin Fields, right? But then again, now he's starting to get weapons in or Chicago, but now he's with Pittsburgh. I think they would still be in a rebuilding structure. I really do. I want to say yes, but the way Justin Fields has performed in Chicago makes me like a little hesitant to go with that. But I don't know. That would be something that we could wish for, but again, wishes are only good in our heads, I think is the saying. So, yeah, I that's what I'm gonna say. I think they would still be restructured. They have the talent. They do. They have Waddle, but it's just it's not like Tua's confidence. It's some were saying bad play calling. I don't know. It's up in the air. I can't pinpoint what it is.
I just think that if you give a guy like Justin Fields, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, and that running game with Raheem Mostert and now Devon Achane, that is as good of an explosive offense that you could have. And Justin Fields at any point in the game can run for 80 yards. He could just take off. Tua has to do that with his arm. He can sometimes, but I haven't seen that level of play from Tua to make this offense unstoppable other than against mediocre teams. Anytime that they play a formidable opponent, the Dolphins struggle. And I think that Justin Fields is a big game quarterback. We saw it at Ohio State, and even in Chicago, he had his moments with a really, really makeshift offensive line and limited weapons, as you said. So I think you throw Justin Fields into a Steelers organization that knows how to win, that has a running game, that has George Pickens, who has the potential to be a top 5 receiver in the league, my biased opinion. I think Fields is going to do really well, especially, Pat Freiermuth, our former Penn State Nittany Lion as well. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to do well with Justin Fields. And I think the Steelers are going to be more legit than people are giving them credit for just with that alone, because obviously quarterback was holding them back for so long. They were winning games with Mason Rudolph. I mean, Kenny Pickett couldn't stay healthy. I'm not going to bash the guy. I like Pickett, but he wasn't the answer, and they lost patience, and they went and got 2 quarterbacks that are veterans that can go and lead the ship. So I was just wondering why the Dolphins haven't pulled the plug on Tua. I understand they invested a lot more in Tua than what the Steelers did in Pickett, but it's still a first-round quarterback, and if he's not going to take you to the Super Bowl, what's the point of wasting time when you can go out there and get a guy like Justin Fields for nothing and possibly make your team better? That's just what confuses me.
I don't know, man. I want to. I think it's like that. How the GM of the Eagles had faith in Nick Sirianni, and he just didn't want to part with him because he liked the way they were going to take him. I think it's the same way with Tua. Uh, to your point, you're right. Steelers, I think, are going to make uh, no pun intended, a splash. I think they're going to do very well. They got Russell Wilson, like you said, and Justin Fields. Um, I could only wish. I wish we could have got Jalen Hurts. I wish we could have, gotten maybe, gosh, the guy from the Chargers, the guy some may call him Pretty Boy from the Chargers.
Justin Herbert, yeah.
Yes, Justin Herbert. I wish. I think there's some loyalty factor to it, but I don't know. I'm kind of biased because I do have his jersey, so I don't want to have to throw that jersey away, that Tua jersey.
I got a jersey too, but I didn't put it on the wall. I put Marino on the wall.
No. I would too. I would too. I don't know. It's strange, but I think every team searches for that Dan Marino who rides, their whole career with them. I don't know, man. It's tricky. It's tricky how the NFL works. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I think he's holding you back.
If you'd ask me, I personally might have taken out Sirianni. I personally might have restructured in Philly because what was that? And it just, you go into last season and you're like, this is how I'm gonna. In my opinion, no one could foresee that, but the way it looked like, everyone looked gassed. The Buccaneers game was complete trash. It was like it completely looked like Jason Kelsey's last game when he walked off. And it looked like basically everyone's last game when they walked off. Exactly, when they walked off because they just it looked like they had no heart through the end of the season.
I was at that game and I was wearing that jersey, so that jersey's going to stay up. Obviously, Jason Kelsey, one of the best centers of all time. But that game in Tampa, obviously living down here in Florida, had to take advantage of getting to see the Birds in a playoff game. You can imagine from rooting for the Eagles, being at that game, watching that travesty, it was, yeah. So moving into this next season, Saquon Barkley is something to be excited about. Obviously, with still the same coaching staff, like you said, it would have made sense for the Eagles to go a different way. I thought that they kind of made a mistake from the beginning with Shane Steichen, letting him go to the Colts because he is a genius and obviously had a lot to do with the Eagles' success on offense. Once he left, it's no secret Jalen Hurts has not been the same quarterback, so I don't know. I mean, I think they might have made a mistake there, but you add a guy like Saquon, I don't care who the offensive coordinator is. If Saquon is in there with that offensive line, Cam Jurgens taking the spot of Jason Kelsey, I think he's going to put up Christian McCaffrey numbers, and I'm not even joking. So,
I might just get the NFL Plus membership on YouTube TV for that reason because I want to see Saquon Barkley go off in Philly. And I've been shopping around for a T-shirt too. I think when I go back in the summer, I'm gonna secure one of those T-shirts. But like I said, I think it was just a hiccup for Philly, and I do think that they can turn it around. And we'll see. Can they be a Super Bowl contender this time around again? Who knows? But I am really excited to see Saquon Barkley.
It's going to be great. He's going to look good, especially in the Kelly Green. I mean, Saquon he looks like he's made to be in Kelly Green. We talked about it the day that he went to the Eagles. Like, we had kind of talked about it, and you could actually give me a little bit of credit here. I predicted Russell Wilson to the Steelers weeks in advance and Saquon to the Eagles actually way longer than that in advance, but I told you about it about 2 weeks beforehand, and it happened. It happened.
No, yeah.
So
no, I get your skills, bro. There you go. Hats off to you.
So we're excited, obviously, about that.
All right, so you have a hockey jersey on.
Yeah.
What can you say happened about the Flyers there? Just a complete collapse, probably like Philadelphia? Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more so that the Flyers didn't really have the team for it to begin with. I think they were outplaying where people saw them going into the season. They were supposed to be a bottom 5, maybe even bottom 3 team in the entire National Hockey League, and they managed to hold the number 3 spot in the Metro for literally the whole season somehow. And it was just these random contributors, like Owen Tippett had a career year. Obviously, Travis Konechny. They have some great young defensemen that were contributing as well. They even lost their goalie, Carter Hart, to that scandal that's going on with the junior team from Canada years ago. And they were using goalies out of nowhere that I never heard of.
Yeah, the guy, I think he's from either the Czech Republic or Russia, but as soon as this game's over, he has to go back unless he gets signed. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I saw that on like a TikTok or something.
Yeah, it's the Flyers.
So, I mean, what I saw was that he was a really good goalie. I think he's a young goalie too, but if he can really work, extend the guy.
Yeah.
Extend the guy.
And they thought Carter Hart was the guy, but obviously with everything else going on, either you lock up this new guy or you try to find something else. But I still thought they were pretty far away from being able to contend, but they surprised some people. And that tells you what a good coach can do. A good coach can make all the difference. And I don't want to say that about Tortorella, but I almost have to admit that he's a really good hockey coach. And if you give him a team of young players that he can instill that grit and that mentality in, guys like Tippett are going to be superstars, right? So I keep saying Tippett because he was a Florida Panthers player, and I don't really pay much attention to the Flyers, but I watched a lot of Owen Tippett when he was in Florida, and a trade that happened last year sent him to Philly, and he has just been fantastic for the Flyers, a team that's had a lot of very bad luck with their draft picks over the last few years, like with Nolan Patrick. When they drafted him, everybody thought, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be unbelievable. He had a lot of issues off the ice that ended up derailing his career, including injuries, and now he's not even in the league anymore. So the Flyers have had really crap luck drafting guys like Nolan Patrick and missing out on guys like Cale Makar, which you hear Flyers fans complaining about all the time. But they weren't supposed to be there.
But that's the thing, right? Like, that's what Philly needed, and it's taken a while. And I think you had kind of alluded to this too. They were supposed to be a low-tier team, and I can only tell you from what I saw on my phone, from what I've seen on social media, they've literally proved everyone wrong. Like you said, locked in the 3 seed, and then on social media, you see everyone get upset and. The emotions go down. Barstool Philly switching their profile picture to Flyers colors. But I guess that's the trend in Philadelphia because, the Sixers now, they were kind of looking good for a while too, and now they're in the play-in tournament.
They were looking good, but then Joel Embiid got injured, and for the most of the season, pretty much the entire middle of the season, they struggled mightily. They needed Tyrese Maxey to put the team on his back, which he was able to do time and time, but not consistently because he's not there yet. Tyrese Maxey's a great player, but he's young. He's still figuring it out. And losing James Harden had to rush the development of Tyrese Maxey to the point where he is relied on to be like a Russell Westbrook, and he just can't do that. Like, they would have needed him to be prime Westbrook if they were going to win any sort of games throughout the season. Now, they got Embiid back and went on a ridiculous winning streak. I think you'd heard about that. They literally have not lost pretty much since Embiid got back. They lost like maybe 1 or 2 games. They're hot right now. So going into the play-in game, I feel confident in the Sixers to beat the Heat. But the Heat are a good team as well. So it's going to be an interesting game. All those teams here at the bottom of the teams that made it to the top 6 seeds and didn't have to play in the play-in tournament, they had the same record as the Sixers. The Pacers had the same record as the Sixers. The Magic had the same record as the Sixers. So it's not like the Sixers were worse than those teams. It's just they didn't have the tiebreakers. So they have to play in the play-in tournament by default, even though they made up all that ground in the last 2 weeks of the season. So Philly is, like you said, it's experienced a lot of up and downs. Obviously, all their teams, Philly lives and dies with their sports teams. But right now, the only team that I have any hope in is the Phillies. So the Sixers, we'll see if they can beat the Heat, but they still have to get through a lot of other teams, including the Celtics in the playoffs. Can they? Probably not. The Flyers, obviously, on the outside looking in, they would need a miracle to get into the postseason. So Philly shifts their heart to the Phillies because the Eagles disappointed them. The Sixers always disappoint us, and the Flyers always disappoint. So it's the Phillies, man, and let's talk about them because this is going to get me hype. Let's talk Phillies.
It's going to get you hype? I think he's
Yes.
gonna get me angry, bro.
Ah.
What are you talking about? No, I tell you, the best thing after a Phillies loss is hearing Ricky Batalico on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Again, I miss it because I'm down here, but when I can hear it, that's because the guy just speaks his mind, man. He speaks Philadelphia. They're not, hitting. They can't. They've only won 2 series. They can't sweep a team. It's. I went I went home for spring break, right? And they could not. It was from what I saw opening day. It was the same exact thing. They can't hit. They're the first 4 guys strike out, and then Bowman, Stott, and Marsh, and the bottom pack of the bottom of the pack,
The daycare.
picks themselves up. But it's the daycare, the water, the team, Marsh and Stott. But that's the thing, right? Like you got. I mean, it's so inconsistent that it's not fun.
Yeah.
I would love for some consistency. It's weird how things happen because the past 2 years, I wouldn't have expected the Phillies to make the World Series 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Playoffs last year because I mean I guess the Braves got knocked out and then the Mets got knocked out, so that really helped us. However, if that didn't happen, that would be a different ballgame. We don't want to look in the past, but again, baseball and the way it plays out is weird, and I don't know if Philly's gonna make the World Series this time. It would be sure as heck awesome, but I hope they get their act together. I really do, because they have the talent. They have the talent. I keep telling my friend who's a big Phillies fan, I'm like, is it the hitting coach? He's like, oh, the hitting coach is the best.
He is.
I think he's with Harper. But I'm like, then why is your top guys not hitting?
And the thing that you have to understand, and that's the thing about Philly, we don't have patience sometimes. But
Exactly.
you have to have patience in baseball more than any other sport. Like I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say it's a really weird sport in a sense that a guy will go 0 for 20, like Bryce Harper just went 0 for 18, but you have to consider the game right before he went 0 for 18, he hit 3 bombs. So it's so streaky. Bryce Harper's always been streaky in his career, but if you're hot, you're hot. Like Bryce Harper can carry a team through an entire postseason like he did the year they did make it to the World Series. You know what happened last year? They stopped pitching to Harper. They stopped pitching to Schwarber, and we could not do it. Nobody else could hit. Okay? You have a guy in the lineup named Johan Rojas that's a free out every time he steps up to the plate. And I was telling you about that a couple weeks ago when we were in class together. I was like, this Rojas guy is really starting to tick me off because he's still there. They could have traded for Mike Trout. They could have done anything for center field. Yeah. Why is Johan Rojas playing every day? Why is Brandon Marsh not playing center field? I would love to see Brandon Marsh play center field daily. Mm-hmm. Yes, he'll get injured, possibly, but he's going to get hurt either way. Play that man every single day in center field. Nick Castellanos is your everyday left or your right fielder, and Schwarber, I don't care that he can't play defense. Put him in left field every once in a while. Let somebody else DH. Alternate, okay? Schwarber can take 50% of the DH at-bats, but if Schwarber is only a DH and he's not going to play left field anymore, he shouldn't be on the team. I hate to say it, but after this year or after next year when Kyle Schwarber's contract is up, if he's not playing the outfield and you have to rely on him as a full-time DH, we don't need a David Ortiz. I love Schwarber. I love Schwarber. He's one of my favorite players on the team. But if you can't play the outfield and you can only hit, you're a liability. A liability. So then,
let me ask you this. You say 50% goes to Schwarber.
Yes.
Who gets the other 50? Do you take away the first base, put Bohm first base, give Harper DH?
Exactly, and you also let Nick Castellanos have a couple days off. I would let Castellanos hit DH at least I'd say once every 2 weeks because right field's not that taxing, but over a stretch of time, if you're playing back-to-backs, I could understand letting him DH. If you're playing 3 games back to back to back, I would honestly say Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos. Let all 3 of them DH. Castellanos is still trying to figure his act out. Obviously, he is the streakiest of streaky. Last year, he tore it up really for a majority of the year. After the year before, it was the opposite.
Yep.
And then in the playoffs, he went nuts, and then he just went ice cold like that. Just bang, ice cold. And the offense felt that because, like I said, he stopped hitting. Castellanos stopped hitting entirely, and they stopped pitching to Harper, and they stopped pitching to Schwarber. Those are your three big guns. I mean, I love Stott, I love Marsh, I love Bohm, I love all those guys, and JT, but it's those big dogs that can really push you to the next level, that push you over the top, the big money makers. And the pitching is, the starting pitching is as good as anybody with Nola and Wheeler and Suarez. I mean, Walker's coming back. You got Chris Sanchez going off. Spencer Turnbull, I really like. I'm not worried about the talent. Like you said, they have the talent.
They have it. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
It's just they're not playing like the talent. And they ranked us, the MLB.com ranked us with number one bullpen in the league over the offseason leading into spring training. They said the Phillies have the number one bullpen in baseball. You know what I said when I saw that? No. I said, no, they do not have the best bullpen in baseball.
I'm like, wait, what?
I was like, there is no way that bullpen is the best in baseball.
Because I think the first series, Nola or someone got pulled early. And I don't know if I was with you or we were talking about it or something, but it was like this, like we said, the same thing. We'll just call Nola. Nola pitched. He got pulled in the 7th, and they blew it in the 8th or the 9th.
It was Wheeler. It was Wheeler. Wheeler pitched really well, and then the bullpen just sucked. Just sucked, man. As bad as you could pitch. Literally as bad as you. Every single one of them has like a 9 ERA this year. I'm gonna look that up. You start talking about it, I'll break it up.
They still had one more game. I think, was it against the Braves or the Reds? Yep. But they had one more game. Yeah, so I mean, like you said, you can't go through your whole bullpen. But then again, do you put Stott or Bowman, and then what do you do? Like, you can't go through your whole freaking bullpen. That's what ticks me off. And I was talking to Tyson about this. The part that makes me aware of this the most is when Blake Snell got pulled in the World Series. Yeah. When someone that is that hot gets pulled, and it's like watching the Phillies, I can foresee it going downhill.
And we saw it last year in the playoffs. You just made a perfect reference to Blake Snell. The starter is not done. You could get Wheeler to throw 110 if you need him to. Nola can throw 100 pitches. It's not a big deal. But you pull them and you put in bums. Craig Kimbrell was not on his game. Craig Kimbrell is one of the greatest closers of all time. I'm not going to crap on Craig Kimbrell. I met the guy. He's an awesome dude. But he sucked in the playoffs last year. And Rob Thompson would not stop calling his number. He would not stop calling his number. And Orion Kerkering, who just came back, by the way, from IL, and I'm really excited about Kerkering. He's probably the best arm we have in the bullpen right now. Kerkering was not pitching well. He could not necessarily elevate his game to the moment that he had to play in. Like that type of atmosphere in the NLCS was too much for a rookie. It just was too much for him. And they didn't understand that. They kept giving him these ridiculous opportunities, but circumstances to try to pitch out of, and then blaming him for not being able to pitch his way out of it. Like, the kid has less than 30 innings in Major League Baseball, and you're going to call his name in the NLCS? What?
Yeah. And you say that, like you said, I was thinking the whole time you were talking like Connor Brogdon, right?
Yes.
And then he goes to the Dodgers. I'm like, what? It's mind-boggling. I'm just laughing because I wasn't trying to say baseball's weird in the fact that, players get hot, players not. I was more talking about the playoffs and stuff. But the way we're going at it, it's just so freaking funny.
Yeah.
It's so freaking. And to that point, I remember getting the updates on that game. I follow an account called Phillies Updates. That's how I get my news. That's how I get the scores. And I was like, oh, Bryce Harper bombs, or 3 bombs in the same game. Okay, great. Next game. Okay, they didn't even win that series. It's like, what?
They didn't even win the series, man.
When they pull out the broom, I think even us down here in Florida, us Phillies fans, are going to be really excited. All over the country, for gosh sakes.
We were trying to finish the Nationals with the sweep to try to make up for losing the first two series, and we couldn't even sweep the Nationals. We couldn't even sweep the Washington Nationals.
No.
That's about the only thing we can do usually, and we couldn't sweep them. I mean, I don't understand, man. Like, I get you're facing Mackenzie Gore, a tough lefty, but man, 5 hits isn't going to do it against the worst team in your division. Like, I get that the Marlins are in last right now. Dude, the Marlins are not the worst team in the NL East. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, the Nationals are definitely farther away from being relevant than the Marlins. The Marlins were a playoff team last year just because they started off bad and have basically their whole pitching rotation on the IL. I'm not saying that the Marlins are a bad team, right? I'm saying the Nationals are a bad team, and we should be able to take advantage of those kind of teams. So, I don't know.
The wacky, we say the wackiness, right? They beat the Yankees the other day. So it's like, okay, if we're a Yankees fan, we could say, oh, we're gonna go into in Miami or New York or we're gonna go in there, we're gonna sweep the Marlins, but here we go.
Marlins won one game against the Yankees, and they won 1 game against the Braves. As long as you're not getting swept, that's proof that you're right there. You're right there.
I don't look at anything else, but it's just weird. You're telling me the supposed one of 2 teams, worst teams in the NL East, beats 1 game. I don't care if it's just 1 game against the Braves or the Yankees. Give them a couple points. Come on now.
And we understand that sweeps are hard to begin with, but if the Marlins were that bad, the Yankees and the Braves would have no problem sweeping them. So that's what I'm getting at is they're not that bad. They're not the Rockies, which again, hey, I'm actually excited to see if the Phillies can pull off a sweep because now they get to play the Rockies. They had a really easy start to the season, man. And the last few years, we saw them start really bad. So we've gotten used to that. But this year, our easiest schedule, our easiest games were at the beginning. So to be sitting at 500 right now is just not okay. So, like, you go in and you play the Rockies, you need to sweep the Rockies. You have to sweep the Rockies.
And, I mean, going back to, the Braves, right? I think I even said to you or I said to someone, if we just get one win out of this, we're satisfied. But I didn't mean the next 4 series or 2. I meant, we should have a sweep by now. But no, and we're not the only team that's having difficulties, right? You look at the Cubs, which have had a winning streak, but they've also been, so-so at times. You look at the Dodgers. I just watched the Padres and Dodgers. Apparently, Dodgers took 1 from the Padres and. The Padres took that series. I'm like, so you look at it in a bigger picture, and it's kind of like, okay, we're not the only team that's having the bad pot of luck or whatever, but it is concerning from a while to look at, okay, but the Dodgers have been really good, the Cubs have been really good, and the Phillies have been lucky, if you want to say that. Yeah.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing. 2 of the best teams in the National League, Phillies, Diamondbacks, both 8-8. They were both in the NLCS last year for a reason.
They were.
You get hot at the right time. I don't care if you lose to Braves in the regular season. If you beat them in the playoffs, I'm cool with it. That's how Philly operates. And same with the Diamondbacks. If you lose to the Dodgers in the regular season, just beat them in the playoffs. That's what they did last year. They can do it again. There's not that much of a gap between those 2 teams.
Yeah. Or if you're the Phillies case, have someone else beat them and move on.
Well, the Phillies have had the Braves number. They've had the Braves number.
They did beat the Braves in the playoffs last year, but I think didn't the Mets get beat out 2 years ago, and that's how they advanced? Yeah, that's okay.
Because we're always worried about the Mets. We're always worried about the Mets.
Then move on.
But the Padres were playing good ball in the playoffs, and they deserved to be in the championship series that year. So I was just trying to pick the worst of 2 evils, kind of. Do I want to play the Mets or do I want to play the Padres? The Padres surprised a lot of people, but not really because they had just got Juan Soto. They said, hey, we're going for it. We're going for it.
You remember that. Yeah.
And so, I wasn't surprised to see that, especially with the pitching rotation that they had. And with the Padres, you had Blake Snell, like we just talked about Blake Snell. Yeah. Obviously, you got Yu Darvish. You got Joe Musgrove. Man, if you got 3 guys like that, that combats the Phillies with Nola, Wheeler, Suarez. But you can't win with just pitching. You got to get hot. The bats got to get hot. And that's what happened. The Padres were scoring runs. And the Diamondbacks were scoring runs last year. So if you could score runs in the postseason and your pitching stays somewhat consistent, you're going to win. It's really about bats and bullpen. Bats and bullpen. Because when you get the lead, throw it to the bullpen. And if the bullpen can hold the fort down, you're going. And the Phillies bullpen was as hot as any bullpen in Major League Baseball when they made it to the World Series, and it was as cold as anyone when they lost in the NLCS. So it's all about being hot at the right time.
I want to say another. Hate to be negative here, but I do want to say another thing the Phillies keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not giving the pitchers run support. I'll tell you, throw out a stat right now.
Yep.
As I was trying to prepare, under Zach Wheeler, let me actually go to my notes here. Under Zach Wheeler, the Phillies have only scored 5 runs. And Zach Wheeler's 4 starts.
Yep.
So you look at that, and the Phillies got scored. And what have I seen from the Phillies? They can get on base, they can hit, but that one guy that tries to hit everyone in, he's not there. Right? 3 outs. It's okay, or Johan Rojas, bases loaded. All right, 3 outs. Like, that's again, hate to be negative, but we're talking points, and that was a great run 2 years ago, but you gotta get the run support, and you gotta get your guys in. And I think this year especially, they've just started to pick up bunting. I think I've seen them when I was watching them back home. I don't know since then, but that's been a complaint from a lot of people is they haven't bunted. But yeah, I mean, and I also want to throw something else out there. 2 years ago, we had home field advantage. And that's what took us past. What was it? I think it was the Braves in the first round, and then it was the
Padres.
Padres.
Yeah, it was the Braves in the DS, Padres in the CS.
We had home field advantage, and then the Astro, and then so we had and I went to that World Series game, and man, that was electric. But that's a big game changer. Is home field advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And even then, like, you still got to hit. And we got no hit that year on the home turf. At Citizens Bank Park, we got no hit by Javier. So, I mean, Javier was hot, and Framber Valdez was hot, and Justin Verlander started to figure it out. We couldn't do anything. So, Citizens Bank Park rocking in the postseason. That's obviously the X factor. But even during the regular season, man, what I'm getting at here, I'm not one that cares that much about the regular season. But you were just talking about it. You get the hits, but you don't get the situational hitting. You don't get the hits with runners on base. The Phillies had 8 hits against the Cardinals a week or so ago. They lost 3-0. Yeah. They had 8 hits and didn't score. Not 1 run. So that's a perfect example of you get the hits, but what about hitting when guys are on base? What about hitting when guys are in scoring position? That's when it matters. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care about the solo home runs. I want homers when guys are on base. I don't care about a double. I care about a double when there's a guy on base and he's scoring, or a single when a guy can go first to third and the next guy can bring him in. It's a next man up mentality. You got to hit in those situations, and when you have an opportunity to score, you got to score, especially when it's about winning a series or sweeping a series. You got to take advantage of those opportunities. And if you're put in a big spot like Rojas and you can't hit, you shouldn't be on the team. And I hate to bust his balls, but he shouldn't be on the team. And I don't care how good you are on defense. If you can't hit, you're a liability. Just like I'm saying if Schwarber can't play defense, he's a liability. So I need guys that can play both sides, because you wouldn't want, okay, let's relate it to another sport. You wouldn't want a guy that could only score and not play defense because he's a liability. Like, let's say it's basketball. If you could shoot, but every time the team comes back to court to score, you don't even play defense, you don't even man somebody up, you're a liability. So every point you score is getting nullified.
Yeah. So the first player that comes to mind, I don't know, was Ben Simmons that guy? He could shoot, but he just couldn't play.
He couldn't shoot, but he could play defense.
Okay. Yeah. No, okay, so the other way around.
He couldn't play offense.
And that's so, I don't know if you know this, the Arena Football League's coming back, right? Mm-hmm. You know that? Okay.
I think I heard that.
I think it's called the Iron Man mentality, where if you're a wide receiver, and I got to check up on the Soul, and I got to check up on the Predators, which I'm really excited to. But if you're a wide receiver, you're more likely going to be quarterback. If you're offensive line, you're going to be defensive line. So, you got to be able to play both ends. And if you can catch and get touchdowns, by all means, enjoy. But if you're giving up that extra run or you're gassed, you may want to sit and let another guy do it, or just hit the treadmill. I don't know, but yes, that's you gotta. It's one of those sports where you gotta. If it's a two-way, you gotta completely match up.
Like Schwarber's not unathletic.
Yeah.
People talk crap on him and say he's
No.
unathletic. He's not unathletic. He's bigger, but the dude's a beast. I mean,
No.
he made a couple bad plays in left field, but he's not incompetent.
No, I just told you the other day. I love a Schwarber home run, leadoff home run. I wish. I don't wish. Well, I do wish, but I want to be around next when what is it called, the Schwarbomb or
Yeah,
the
Schwarbomb.
Hoagie? Or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's coming up. Dude, I think yeah. But I mean, I love the promotion with Wawa.
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, he's a beast. He is. He can hit. I mean, I think if I can just off of the mind, he's probably had 3 home runs in the past 2 weeks, and those were leadoffs. And I may be wrong, but it might be pretty high up there. Yeah. But no, I mean, look, Harper's a beast, and I want to make like. Is it just me or does Harper seem like he's swinging for the fences like me the other day?
He has been like that his whole career. He's been like that his whole career. He has that aggressive, like, swing and that torque, and that's why people were wondering when Harper was younger, dude, you're going to hurt yourself, or, dude, you're not going to be able to play, into your 40s because, bro, you swing way too hard. Like, he swings like he's a very aggressive swing, and he always swings at the first pitch. At least he did last year. I haven't seen enough Phillies games this year to see that, but I did watch the game where he hit the bombs, and it's the same Harper. It's just he went cold after that, and he just doesn't look like himself sometimes. He's trying too hard, I would think. When he starts being patient and allowing them to walk him and get on base, it actually is a better version of Bryce Harper. And when Bryce Harper is feeling himself, Bryce Harper's, you know what I mean? So the thing that makes me upset with the Phillies, and I'm actually going to ask you 2 more questions about the Phillies, and then we'll move on. So,
do you mind if I start with the story really quickly?
Yo, go ahead.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
I'm also a huge Cubs fan, by the way. I think I've told you that.
Yeah.
I remember I went to a Cubs game. They were versus the Padres, and it was 1-0. Alfonso Soriano went to the plate, and I remember my mom saying he kept swinging for the fences, and that was, I forget the lineup back then. I think it was like maybe between 2010 2011.
Yeah.
But if it's just 1-0, all you need is a run. That's the same thing with it's just 1-0, but the Phillies can't get the guys in. Like that's where it becomes an issue. Going back to the game I was at with the Cubs and Padres, like if everyone's continuously swinging for the fences, which everyone came up short. That's not good. All right, go ahead.
And no, we saw that with the Phillies. That's why it's relevant. Like anybody that watched the Phillies in the postseason the last 2 years, they've had moments where they get like that. Everybody's trying to hit a bomb. Nick Castellanos hits how many bombs in how many games, and because he's trying to hit home runs because he thinks he can, he goes 0 for 20 something. And that's what happened with Harper. He hits 3 bombs in a game. He's like, oh, this is easy. He keeps trying to hit bombs, and he's going 0 for 18, dude. Then you're a liability. I don't care about the home runs.
If everyone knew you just need a base hit. If everyone knew that, but then you get a base hit, get a guy on second, guy on third. You just need an infield. You just need to get it on right.
I think that's what messed Trey Turner up last year. Trey Turner,
angry about the Phillies. Yeah.
Trey Turner in the WBC was hitting bombs. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's gonna win MVP." He didn't do anything for like the first how many months of the season. It's because he was getting used to hitting bombs, and Trey Turner's not a player that's going to hit 35, 40 bombs. I'm okay with 20 bombs. I'm okay with 20 and you hit 330. Just be Trey Turner. Don't try to be something that you're not. Don't try to do something that you don't do. Be yourself and play your game. You're Trey Turner. Your job is to get on base. Bryce Harper's going to hit the home runs. Schwarber's going to hit the home runs. So that leads me to my question. One of my 2 questions for you. Why is Kyle Schwarber leading off? Because this has been a debate for the Phillies for 2 years. Why is Kyle Schwarber leading off? Because you don't want a leadoff home run. You want a guy that gets on base. And yes, he gets walked, but I would rather have Bryson Stott or Brandon Marsh or even Trey Turner leading off, not Kyle Schwarber. What's your take on that?
So I told you about my friend Dave, right? And he kind of took me under his belt, and he kind of took me to. And I asked him the same question. and I was like, why does Kyle Schwarber keep leading off? He looks. I don't hate to put it this way, but he looks a little better right now, a little leaner, but he used to not be able to run to first base, the beast in him. Again, I hate to put it that way, but that's what everyone has been. Dave told me that it's the right and left scenario, right? So
yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, if it's a left-handed hitter, and you can help me out if I'm wrong. You're gonna start right, go left, start right, go left. So you're gonna go every other.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's it. But why they're still doing it? I don't know.
Stott and Marsh are lefties. So what's the excuse?
So, and I don't know, because I wish you'd ask Dom Dabrowski the same thing when you met him. Why doesn't he intervene on that? I don't know, but is it a confidence issue? Is it that you put your home run hitters up front, and then you put, I don't want to call them weaklings, but you put them you put them in the back, like what? I still wonder that, and now that you asked me that, I'm gonna wonder that for the rest of Rob Thompson's tenure. I mean, is it that Harper's used to being third? Is it that Schwarber? But because I think wasn't Schwarber? He was a catcher with the Cubs, so wasn't he
He was
in the middle of the lineup? Yeah.
Yep. He was always a middle of the lineup guy, and he was that guy that you could rely on, and he would clutch out certain situations, like in the World Series that year. Dude, Kyle Schwarber was Babe Ruth. He was Babe Ruth, dude.
Yeah, he was.
He was out all year, and he worked his way back from rehab from, I think it was a torn ACL or something, and he dominated in the World Series. They wouldn't have won if it wasn't for Kyle Schwarber. So
do you remember where you were during that World Series?
I do not.
You did? Do you know or you don't?
I don't know.
You don't? I remember it was I think it was in middle school, and I stayed up for the game. There was that rain delay. And I had to hold with it. And I remember, I remember when, I'm getting goosebumps right now, when the game went final, and I start screaming. My mom comes down from upstairs, and she's like, Christian, what are you doing? I'm like, the Cubs won the World Series! And we start literally hugging and cheering together. My mom and I have watched every big game together, which kind of hurts, why I'm down here and she's up there. But, that's besides the point. I'm here for a reason, and I believe whatever. But I think that was really a special moment, because I remember that game was amazing. I mean, they came back from 3-1 down with then Guardians. Well, no, then Indians, now Guardians. But yeah, that was special.
And then the last thing about the Phillies, thing baseball, really.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm so feeling the way I am about the Phillies and about this regular season and how it's going so far. It's a long season, so 16 games isn't that big of a deal. We're only 10% of the way there, but the Braves are in a really bad spot. Okay, Spencer Strider is done for the year. He is the best pitcher in the National League. And so when you lose that, that's a whole spot in your rotation that you got to use a guy, no offense, a bum from AAA that isn't qualified, and they're just going to get shelled. I mean, we saw it. I've seen it with the Astros. They brought up this guy. I think his last name was Andretti, or he was a prospect, and he got shelled in his first game.
Irrelevant. Yeah.
And the Braves have been doing that. And I think today they're pitching another guy that's never made a start before in his career. If I remember correctly, his name is Vines. Darius Vines. He's 25 years old. He's never started, and that's Spencer Arrigetti's the guy I was talking about. They're going head-to-head today, by the way. Take the over, but
go ahead. Do we have a score from that game?
No, that's starting at 8:10 on MLB Network. Those two guys going head-to-head. So
yeah, that should be. Oh God, two rookies going at it. Okay. So then, finish the question. What's the question?
So my question is, shouldn't the Phillies have a little bit more urgency trying to win that division, maybe get that bye week or get that home field advantage that we were just talking about how it's more advantageous for the Phillies than it is any other team in baseball to have that home field advantage in the postseason. If they could play all their games, I should say 4 out of 7 at Citizens Bank Park each series, dude, that is, I think, a lock. So can we talk about why they're not just going to go for it and try to make that push and win that series, that division this year, win the East?
I'm gonna say this. Mm-hmm. Did you hear what JT Realmuto said before the season?
I did.
Okay, so if let me tell you, Remington, I would have that quote like freaking the Notre Dame quote right in my locker room. I would pat it. Sorry, next door. I would pat it every time I leave for that game, for that field, because they should be watching this. Unfortunately, we talked about how, and I'm gonna say this legally, but we hope Spencer Strider recovers and is better, whatever. But we don't hope it for the Phillies, you know what I mean, right? But that's what it is. That's what it is, right? You gotta capitalize. You gotta capitalize.
There's never going to be a better time than when the best pitcher in the league is not on the team. They are not the Braves without Spencer Strider. They're not. There's not one pitcher in the world that can take that number 1A spot. The Braves were good before Strider, but when they got Strider, they were elite. They were unbeatable. They have been a god squad, a super team, if you will, just like the Dodgers are claiming to be now. Without Strider, dude, Max Fried hasn't looked good. Charlie Morton is very old. Bryce Elder got sent to AAA because he's been not the same all-star pitcher he was last year. I think last year might end up being a fluke for the Braves because if Strider's not there, they're not going to be a 100-win team. And then you lose Morton probably at the end of the year. You're losing Fried. Again, Fried not the same pitcher anyways. If Elder never becomes the same pitcher again, Strider's your only relevant starting pitcher in that rotation. Their most effective starter right now is Reynaldo Lopez. He wasn't even on the team last year. He was on the White Sox.
Remember, put that in the clubhouse, all right? You got to capitalize on this. And at this point, I think it's no excuse. And yet there's no questions. You got to capitalize.
The time is now. The time is now.
Yep. I was in LA. No. I was in LA when I got the news, and I remember I told my mom, and I was like, "This is great news for the Phillies." But you gotta. The time is now. If anything,
we don't want to see anybody get hurt. But Strider, the ace of the Braves, going down.
With that legality.
And even Yuri Perez for the Marlins, I think he's their best starter other than Alcantara, and now they don't have either for the whole year. They get Edward Cabrera back. They might get Braxton Garrett back. Max Meyer's been good, but the Marlins aren't really a threat. The Phillies should run away with that division.
How close is the division right now? Do you have that?
So it's only 2 games. The Phillies have played more, so the Phillies are 8-8, and if I pull up the exact record, Phillies are 8-8, and the Braves are 9-5. They're 2 games ahead. But that's the thing is the Braves have played 14, the Phillies have played 16 because of all the postponements so far for the Braves. But obviously the Braves have been carried by Marcell Ozuna. He's been otherworldly this season, just like Ronald Acuna was last year. But that's not sustainable. Even though he's on my fantasy team, I know that's not sustainable, so I'm not banking on Ozuna being Acuna. They didn't switch bodies that I know of, so let's just ignore that start for Marcell Ozuna. So here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
You just mentioned LA, and because we're wrapping up the show, I have to say something.
Okay.
It's Jackie Robinson Day.
Oh, you know what? I want to get one of the Phillies 42 or Cubs 42. I want to get one of those shirts. Is it today?
Yeah. So shout out Jackie Robinson because it's Jackie Robinson Day.
Yeah.
I was going to say something in the open, but I forgot. I even put it right here. I made sure the Robinson jersey was visible. Yeah. Brooklyn Dodgers Jackie Robinson jersey was visible. Yeah. And you said LA, so I thought Dodgers. I'm like, you know what? We're talking super teams. We're talking LA. Let me talk Jackie because everybody's wearing 42 today. So you got to shout out Jackie. Do you have anything else to say? We got a minute left. Do you have anything else that you want to say to everybody?
You know what? I think let's just go. Let's go Phillies. Let's go Dolphins. Let's go Gators. Let's go Penn State. I mean, I'm excited for these seasons. I love lacrosse, but I'm too busy on the weekends. I feel like college football is when I can finally just settle down and watch football. But yeah, let's just see how these next few weeks go for the Phillies.
And we'll have to talk lacrosse at some point because I'm trying to learn lacrosse. I've been calling lacrosse lately, trying to learn the sport. Carson's been trying to get me into lacrosse. And we can maybe do like 3 of us on here talk some lacrosse at some point. So and some college football. But yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And this has been the Remington Kuhn Show. I'm Remington Kuhn. This is Christian Tagert. I appreciate you guys watching today. This was episode 3, and I'm gonna be back tomorrow for episode number 4. Thank you all for tuning in. Everybody have a good day. Go Phils.
Go Phils. See you guys.